The concept for the series is simple. What would happen if you took a vanilla Minecraft player and gave them all the mods to play with? Would they thrive in this beautiful and complex world? Or would it be simply too much for them to handle? Welcome to All the Mods 9. Hey everyone, my name is KryptoCal, and welcome to the next episode of All the Mods 9. After our fun detour into Plutonium and getting all that stuff done, I think it's time that we dive right back into Mechanism and start working our way towards getting that fission reactor up and running so we can get some antimatter. Before we can get, obviously, any antimatter, we have to first get the fissile fuel required to actually fuel the fission reactor. Fissile fuel, it is quite a process. A lot of similar stuff to how we did the ore processing back here. What I'm planning on setting up is going to be over in this room here. This is going to be our fissile fuel station. We're going to end up transporting it out of this room into wherever we have our fission reactor set up at some point. And the goal is to try and make a pretty complex system, pretty straightforward using XNet. But I'm not going to go ahead and probably bore everyone with the exact same setup, or at least a very similar setup to how we did the ore processing. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead, get the whole thing working, and then I'm going to explain exactly how the whole thing works. So we're going to start placing some stuff down, hopefully making things work, putting things together, slapping gases in. Slapping gases sounds inappropriate.
You better believe it does.
Good one. Good one. Yes. Another, please. And after a few hours of trial and error and one sleep later, I think I have something set up here that I'm actually pretty proud of. And this whole setup is pretty efficiently making us fissile fuel. And I've used quite a few different processes to make this whole thing come together, so we'll go ahead and kind of break it down step by step. The first step is our raw material inputs. And our raw material inputs are uranium over on this side to make the yellow cake uranium, and on this side we have the sulfur dust turning into sulfur dioxide. Very similarly to how we had our ore processing setup. And what I have here is just refined storage, exporting sulfur directly into this drawer, and I'm actually using XNet to send all of the sulfur from the drawer into all of the oxidizers. Similarly over here, I have the exact same thing, but instead, there's a bit of a process in between here that is not visible on the surface. I'm sending the uranium ingots into the enriching factories here to be enriched into the yellow cake uranium, which is then being sent from there up and buffered in this drawer here. The yellow cake uranium is then split evenly and sent into our chemical oxidizers here, which then converts into the uranium oxide. Using XNet further, we have two gas channels here. The first gas channel, which is this one right here, is taking all of the sulfur dioxide out of the chemical oxidizers and sending it into this set of chemical infusers, which is including oxygen and dioxide here to create the trioxide. The oxygen for these is actually being produced by these electrolytic separators here. So instead of using XNet to send the oxygen, I'm just actually having these directly output the gas to the left. So basically it's just sending water in the back here using a sink with a little bit of laser IO, and that's then just sending oxygen directly in here. Once the sulfur trioxide is in the infusers here, it is then sent to the left once again to be further infused into the sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid requires the water vapor and the sulfur trioxide, so we have sulfur trioxide coming in from this one, and then these condensators are turning water into the vapor. This is set up the exact same way as the electrolytic separators are, and we're basically just having this create sulfuric acid. Once the sulfuric acid has been made, we're just sending it via XNet directly into this ultimate chemical tank, which I actually have entangled over there. This entangle block right here is actually simulating the chemical tank over there, so our sulfuric acid is accessible for all of our dissolution chambers. So the three things going into the dissolution chambers here are the fluorite from our refined storage system, the sulfuric acid from our entangled block from over there, as well as some power using just, I believe I have a point somewhere underneath. Yeah, a point right here, which is also hooked into XNet. And all of the uranium oxide is just coming in through these pipes here and is being buffered in this one tank down here. So this hydrofluoric acid is then being sent using XNet down to these three chemical infusers, which is one of the final steps of this whole process. It's then being combined with the uranium oxide from our oxidizers over here. And then the uranium hexafluoride is being sent out the front to all of our isotopic centrifuges, where it's being converted into fissile fuel. All that being said, there's a lot of work that's gone into the system, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this setup came together, and I have to find a way to facade this entire area and make it look pretty, but that's for our later date, I think. So now that we have fissile fuel coming in at a very good rate, I think it's time that we go ahead and actually get this fission reactor set up and running. So to make the actual reactor, we have to get a couple things here. First of all, we need to get the fission reactor casings and quite a few of them. So it's going to be worth it to put all of these on autocraft because we're going to need a bunch of them. Get our fission reactor casings. We're also going to need some of these fission reactor ports. This is how we're going to send all of our fissile fuel into the reactor, as well as pulling out the waste product, which is actually the stuff that we're after. And we need some of these fission fuel assemblies, and then also some of these control rods. Last thing we're going to need is actually a little bit of reactor glass. And by a little bit, I mean quite a bit, because we are going to be making, I think, quite a substantially sized reactor here. Probably a max size reactor if possible. This does require enriched iron to craft. We do have it on autocraft though, so I think that should hopefully be doable. All right, so those are all the basic things we're going to need to start getting this set up. Let's throw these into our crafter down here and get started. So the max size for a fission reactor, I believe, is 18 by 18 by 18. That's quite a large structure, so we're going to have to get quite a few materials here. Can we make 1920 of these? We can. Okay. And then we're going to need also, I guess, 128 of the control rod assemblies. The control rod assemblies are what actually cap off every single fuel rod at the very top of the reactor. The reactor glass is very slow. I will maybe go ahead and just start bringing this all over, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up this reactor in a different dimension completely. Welcome to the Ever Bright dimension. This is a dimension added by the Blue Skies mod. And the cool thing about this dimension is it's daytime here all the time, which is going to come into play in a little bit because we're going to actually need the daytime to convert some of the resources from the reactor into other resources called polonium. Polonium is the one that requires the daytime. Well, I'm going to get Grace to help me build this thing because this is a big part of mechanism. So here, take some of these, and we're going to try that again with no magnet on. So the lower base of this reactor, I believe, has to be an 18 by 18. These are the two middle blocks. So I guess from here we want to build out 8 blocks out, and then the 9th one is the middle 2 by 2.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, build extra 8 out from the middle 2 by 2. If you also use your wrench or your configurator in wrench mode, you can actually use it to pick these blocks up. So
nice.
Instead of using the pickaxe, if you want to use your normal pickaxe, you can just use the wrench to pick the blocks up. Because in the Blue Skies dimension here, only the Blue Skies mod tools are actually effective. Also, flight is disabled in this dimension. So from here, we have to build up, I guess, 17 blocks. All of our glass should be done now. Yep, that's about all the glass we needed, I think. So let's go ahead and get all of this in. Now keep in mind, for the fission reactor here, you do have to use the reactor glass. There is a different type of glass in mechanism called structural glass, which is used actually for that can be used in the fusion reactor and a couple of other mechanism multi-blocks like the dynamic tank and the induction cells and stuff. But the fission reactor has to be made with the reactor glass, so don't go ahead and bulk craft a bunch of this. All right, there is our first one. I should have actually done it this way. I don't know why I decided to do it that way. Cool. Okay, so let's wand this up. All right, and the glass is also covered. So theoretically, that should have kind of completed the outer structure of the reactor. These are what we're actually going to fill the inside of the reactor with. What we're going to do is just checkerboard pattern it. Be very careful on the first layer, because the first layer is the most important, because we're going to wand it up from here. We're going to have to wand this up, but probably one of us should be doing this. And I will wand it up to the top here. I'm going to just bring a little spot out for us to get out. And this. So now we have to get our control rod assemblies out to cap this whole thing off. So we're going to go ahead and just put all of those on top, and then we're going to seal it off just like this. Oh, we do have a problem here,
This side doesn't have it. Help. Let me do.
No. Get up there.
Dang it.
Oh, there we go. It just formed. Okay, so the issue was that we didn't have the ports in here. That must have been what was causing it to not form. You can right-click anywhere on the reactor and it will pull up its interface here. So what we're going to have to do is just configure a couple of these ports. So these green ports here, as they come like this, are considered to be input ports. So that's kind of where we're going to put our one of our entangloporters for the fissile fuel. We're going to grab one of those, and that's going to be hooked into that. The other one is we have to input coolant, so that we have to input water into this thing as the coolant. We can also input I believe it's cooled sodium, but that's a whole other process that I'm not really wanting to go into right now. So we're going to use water. We're going to end up using a sink And what we can actually do to make this very, very efficient is by using integrated dynamics. Integrated dynamics is broken for fluids, so we can go ahead and put a variable card into import all fluids. Come in here and we can change the fluid transfer rate right here. So I can set this to like 2.1, that's 210 million, that's 2.1 billion. Basically going to instant fill our reactor. So we should never have to worry about water as long as we're running this at a pretty manageable rate of fuel consumption. Okay. So we can go ahead and select our fissile fuel network here. And we're going to tell it to export gas out the top, just like so. And that should hopefully pump fissile fuel right into the reactor. It did. Nice. Cool. So we've basically provided our reactor with everything it needs to basically start up and get going. But we're not going to do that quite yet because we want to set up a couple of fail safes just in case something goes wrong. I'm going to do the logic adapters here around the back. And basically you can set it to output a redstone signal when certain conditions for the reactor are met. This one adapter that I'm standing in front of here is set to high temperature. If we go into the reactor here and it basically gets to a point where the reactor is getting way too hot, which will start to damage it, this is going to turn this redstone adapter logic port on. Okay. So we can actually use that to turn off the reactor based on those logic signals. So we want one to be on high temperature, one to be on excess waste, one to be on damage critical, and one to be on insufficient fuel. So these are all 4 conditions that could happen in our case. We're going to hope that they're not, and none of these hopefully will actually ever turn on. I think we might actually be able to use a couple of little redstone gadgets here to make something work for this. Yeah, just a NOT gate. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what we want. All right, let's get these a signal here to at least start off. We'll get these a uranium signal, and then we'll give also one up here. All right, so theoretically, once one of these here receives some power, which we can test out in a sec, that'll hopefully flip this off, which will then deactivate the reactor. So let's test that. Let's turn this thing on. It's running at a very low rate, so I'm not worried about that right now. Let's simulate this one coming on here. Perfect. And the reactor shut off. And that is a reactor safety class. All we have to do is take care of the output, which is going to be, we're going to have output steam from the reactor because it's heating up the water. So what we're going to do is have one of these configured to output coolant. And the easiest way to take care of that is just going to be by putting a fluid trash can right on there. All the steam coming out will just be trashed immediately. And the last one here is the most important. It's going to be our output waste. So the output that we're going to be getting from this reactor that we're going to make use of is the nuclear waste. Now the nuclear waste is going to be converted into 2 different materials, both of which we're going to need in different quantities. First off, we have plutonium. And plutonium is made inside of the isotopic centrifuge, similarly to how we made the fissile fuel. Now this one is not going to be required long term. We need the plutonium to get some of the plutonium pellets, but once we have a decent number of these, we actually don't really need the plutonium for much more. Eventually, we're going to completely switch over from plutonium to only producing polonium after a while, because polonium is what we actually need to make the antimatter in the end. We actually can't craft up the machine that we need to make polonium quite yet because it requires something called HDPE sheets. And if you take a look at that, we don't actually have a setup for HDPE at all. It's not going to be a super complicated process. We have to make ethylene and turn substrate into HDPE. So there is going to be a little setup that we're going to have to do to make a little bit of that. I wanted to start off by producing plutonium though. And I think what we'll do is just set up the isotopic centrifuges. Here's probably fine. The pipes will go right into the back of this. We're gonna need to turn those into the plutonium pellets. And we're gonna do that inside of this PRC right here. Basically put this down like so. Water should be going into this machine, which it is, fantastic. And then we're gonna also wanna give all of these power from the bottom here. So our PRC is gonna accept gases from the back. We're gonna send our plutonium pellets out to the left, and the resultant bad gas that we don't want to keep anymore is going to go out to the right. To deal with the spent waste, we actually have to make use of the radioactive waste barrels. Unfortunately, there is no other way to deal with these except for just letting them decay very, very slowly. They're just basically mass storages for spent waste. So we're probably going to end up just putting this somewhere out of sight and out of mind.
Ocean. Put it in the ocean.
Exactly. Where else would we put it? We're just going to make a large area underground or under the main platform where we're going to fill in an absolute ton of these. And then we're going to put the barrels underneath. I have to move this all one forward. Be very careful what you're breaking around anything that's radioactive, because even if you break a cable that has a little bit of residue of something radioactive, you bust that open, boom, radiation everywhere for hours. So be very careful which cables you're breaking. Ender chest to the left. The only thing that we're missing here is we have to get fluorite into this machine to convert into the plutonium. All right, now we're exporting fluorite into the green channel. We'll actually use this to send fluorite over here very easily. Oh, it has to be fluorite dust. This is very jank. It just has to work. Now we can basically say input from the top, output to the bottom. There we go. Fluorite is coming in now. By default, the reactor burns. If you come into the reactor settings here, it only burns at 0.1 millibuckets per tick just to start off to be safe. So what we can actually do is increase that burn rate because we have a lot of fissile fuel coming in. But the hotter you set this to, or the faster you set this to, the hotter the reactor is going to run. So we're going to probably want to upgrade this in stages speed-wise, just to make sure we're not overshooting our capabilities here. So I think what we're going to do is start off with a 50 millibucket per tick burn rate, and we're going to kind of run this and see if it kind of is stable, and we'll keep working our way up and up. Push the green button. All right, it does appear to be stable.
Something. It made something.
Yeah, we have plutonium pellets. Let's keep moving our way up in the speed. We're going to add 100 millibuckets per tick now, so we're even going to be going twice as fast. That is absolutely flying now. Okay, so now that we have our plutonium pellets coming into the system here, our next step is to go ahead and make some of these HDPE pellets so that we can make the solar neutron activator to make the polonium pellets. And we'll probably just do this system over here as well. It's going to be a pretty straightforward setup. What we're going to need to do is basically start off by producing some ethylene. And we also need to have this substrate coming in as well, because this is actually what we're going to turn into the HDPE. So this is done all inside of the pressurized reaction chamber. And then into this, we're going to have to pump some power, water, and hydrogen, as well as biofuel. To take care of the water and hydrogen, what we'll do is just set up a sink and an electrolytic separator right behind here. So we'll just go ahead and configure it like so. Pressurized tube to pump the hydrogen into the front here. And we want the hydrogen, which is the blue output, to be there. And that should be putting hydrogen into our PRC. Nice. So what we're going to do for biofuel, I think, is pretty straightforward. We're going to craft up a couple of hopper botany pots. What we're going to do is just place our crusher down just like this. And then we'll just place a hopper botany pot right in front and behind like this. And then we can even just get a hopper here and pump into the side. And then what we'll do is we're going to get some insanium farmland out. And we're going to be growing some melons in here, because when these melons grow up, they actually produce the melon slices. And melon slices, if we come in and take a look at biofuel, the melon slice gives 4 pieces of biofuel. And every time a melon grows, we get 9 of these. Oh, we're getting the full melons. To take care of that, what we're probably going to have to do actually is make use of a drawer system to convert those down into their slices. What we're looking for is a simple compacting drawer. All right, so now we have melons growing here. I see you're dressed for the occasion. And we'll lock this drawer. And in order to get this into the crusher now, we actually have to use a pusher upgrade. We can select the pusher upgrade to output to the bottom down, so it'll send the melon slices directly in. And yeah, as you can see here, we're actually producing the substrate and ethylene. The ethylene has to be sent into a condensator to turn into the liquid ethylene. There we go. Our liquid ethylene is coming in. We want to pump that right in to another pressurized reaction chamber with oxygen. So we're going to actually grab the oxygen out of this separator right here. And we want to make sure that the gas here is configured to output oxygen to the right. All right, PRC, oxygen is in, and the liquid ethylene is in. A little bit of power. So the only thing this is missing now to start producing us the HDPE is going to be the actual substrate. So we're going to have to send the substrate here out the front. We'll just do a good old integrated dynamics setup again, because it is simply amazing. Here are HDPE pellets coming in. Probably just going to send this into an ender chest to go back into our storage. And we'll have to set a drawer for the HDPE. But other than that, we're basically all set. And we have actually more than enough plutonium pellets, which is fantastic. So now we can actually basically convert all of this over to polonium. The only thing we have to do is make sure that all these machines are fully drained out of plutonium first, which is actually a little trickier than you might think. Because it is radioactive, there is not really the only way that you can really get rid of a machine once it has radioactive material in it is either to send it into one of the waste barrels to decay, or to make sure that it is completely drained in some capacity of all of its contents. So what we can do is basically turn off all the machines and let them fill up completely. It looks like every single pellet requires 1,000 plutonium. So as long as it's a multiple of 1,000, if we let everything fill up to the max and then stop it from actually outputting, we should be able to fully drain it all too. All right, so now this tubing behind here is fully drained. So this is able to be taken down. All right, so let's turn on these machines now. They should all convert into exactly 1,000 millibuckets of plutonium, and hopefully this will fully drain out of plutonium all the way. Yes, okay. So theoretically, our entire system here has no radioactive material in any of it. So we can actually go ahead and now grab these. All we have to do now is change the machines out front here. All we have to do is instead put the solar activators here instead of those centrifuges. So let's go ahead and go home and set up the autocraft for those solar neutron activators really quick. Considering that we do have the HDPE on autocraft, we should be able to do that no problem. And can we craft 3 of these? Yes, we can. Theoretically, this will just hopefully work. So let's turn the reactor back on and see if this works.
Oh, yep. There's polonium.
Polonium coming in. And there is our first polonium pellet. Really, immediately. I mean, at least do it here. Did you convert him?
He's not wasted. He's just a regular guy.
Oh, it's only a 5% chance.
You really just want more radioactive material.
Well, we should be able to actually increase the rate here of what we're putting into the reactor. We're only at 100 millibuckets per tick right now. We should be able to crank this up a little hotter. Can we go to 256? I think we can support that rate, but we'll keep an eye on it.
He's wasted.
He's wasted.
Oh, good job. He just really was hungry.
We just low rolled him to 5%, I guess. So now we want to get a bunch of these polonium pellets stocked up because we're going to need these to craft the SPS. The supercritical phase shifter is how we're going to go ahead and start making antimatter. Now, antimatter is quite an expensive material and it's going to take a very long time to produce. The SPS casings here require HDPE sheets, 4 polonium pellets, and 1 plutonium pellet. We need 60 of the SPS casings, 122 structural glass, and 3 quartz. So while we are kind of waiting around here, we need to get a drawer set up for polonium. I'll also go ahead and go home and set up all the crafts that we need for the SPS. We're missing 134 polonium pellets here, and we are missing a decent amount of HDPE. So just going to be probably a few more minutes before those materials are finished. Okay, so now we have enough materials to craft up 60 of our SPS casings, and we also needed 122 of the structural glass. So let's go ahead and also craft that up. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is craft up 3 of these SPS ports, which we can do. We're also going to have to look ahead here and get a couple extra things. One is the supercharged coil. That is actually what we use to kind of send power into this machine to convert the polonium into antimatter. There we go. And we actually get an extra supercharged coil. We'll just probably stick with 1 for now. So the design, I believe, will be something like this on each side. So it's that shape on all 6 sides.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wait.
Fun fact, in my All the Mods 8 series, this is the actually only time that I died in the series. Was doing this. I accidentally teleported inside of this while it was creating antimatter, and it basically it one-shots you. There we go.
Oh, you did it. You're inside.
Get
out.
So now we have to get the polonium from down here all the way up to the SPS. And that's going to be quite a long cable to do normally. We can actually entangle the input port here. So let's just double check to make sure this actually works.
It's unbound here. It says.
Right click here. That should be bound, which I can then hopefully come in here and select it to... Oh, this isn't formed. That's why.
Maybe break something and place it back. See if it works. Just... There it is.
Oh, so now it works.
Turn it off and turn it back on again. That's all it needed.
Well, we are producing antimatter, albeit very slowly. The gas antimatter has to go into a chemical crystallizer, and once it gets to 1,000 millibuckets, it'll turn into 1 antimatter pellet. This point here, which is providing power to the SPS, I have it currently set to 800,000 transfer limit, but we're not even able to provide that much because of our power issues. At this current rate, it's making 0.001 millibuckets per tick. This is technically producing antimatter, but this is going to take us like 5 months at this speed. So we're going to have to get a power situation figured out very shortly. But I think that's where we're going to call it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I really hope you did enjoy. If you did enjoy, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to join the Discord. The link is in the description down below. But that's it for me, everybody. I hope you all have a good one, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye!